Hey guys, and welcome to a literary odyssey where we love to read books, but we love the journey even more. And I'm your host, Angelica Nagy. So, excuse the way that I look because I just had one of the ugliest cries in a long time from a book. Just like seconds ago, finished reading The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavendar. I have to first say, I did not expect this book to be anything the way that it actually was. I was actually drawn away from it because I've always had this thing that I would never be into YA books. I think the last YA book that I ever read was the Twilight Saga, which is also weird because I started to love reading off of the Harry Potter series. I don't know why I would have thought that I would be against YA, but this is the first YA book that I have picked up in a very long time. And I decided to read it because I follow Hannah from A Clockwork Reader. And she was always talking about this book, and I ended up putting it on my TBR. My God, what a beautiful read. I mean, from start to finish. It really played to my interest of I like darker books because I like horror, suspense, thriller. I love historical fictions that take part in World War II or the Great Depression. So I kind of like my characters to kind of go through struggles, grow, character development. And this book was beautiful. I'm going to rate it a 5 out of 5 on my Goodreads. I can't stress enough how much I love this book. In this video, I will not give any spoilers away because I definitely want everyone to enjoy the journey that is this book. I'll just pretty much give my recommendation. This book starts off with a family who moves to Manhattan. They go through many tragedies in their life, and there's this one woman who I struggled to say her name throughout the book. I think her name is Emmeline, but their family suffers significant amount of tragedies within their lifetime. She loses all 3 of her siblings. She loses the 3 love of her life. So she goes through her life now guarded. She refuses to love. She believes that her family has a curse, that when they fall in love, something horrible happens. Sorry, I'm sniffling because literally when I closed that book, I hysterically cried. I called my husband up on the phone and I could barely talk through the ugly sobbing. And he's used to it. He understands how close I get to my characters. So he no longer laughs at me. He kind of humors me in the sense of, he's like, okay, what was it about, honey? What happened? It's just, you're crying, but it's still a good book. I called him and I was hysterical. And I was embarrassed at the fact that I was so hysterical, but it was just an amazing book. So like I was saying, the woman suffers through a lot of family tragedy, a lot of love tragedy. When she finally meets her husband, she knows that she's not in love with him, but she says, hey, don't ever ask me to give you my heart because I will not, but what I will give you is a child and for me to be a good wife until the day that you die. And he passes relatively fast, but she bestows on him a daughter named Vivian. And I have to say that this story is written with the narrative of Vivian's daughter, who is a twin. So while you're hearing about the grandmother Emmeline's life, followed by Vivian, Ava's mother, you see the struggles or you read about the struggles, but ultimately the book, the main protagonist is Ava Lavendar and her tragedies that are horrific. She bestows a little girl onto the husband, but he sadly passes away, but he leaves behind a successful bakery and she takes over the business. However, in the time that they live, in which it spans from the Great Depression on, people noticed that there was a difference about the family and they would start whispering that she was a witch, etc., etc. Of course, she was not a witch. It just so happened that her family was very sensitive to the world. They can smell scents that other people couldn't smell. They could feel impending doom, or they could feel when good things were happening as well. So it was just that they were sensitive. They were not witches. They didn't cast spells or anything like that. But like I said, the writing was so impeccable that you didn't feel like you were reading this fantasy or this sci-fi. It felt like it was happening in the real world, but just there was a girl who had wings. And so our main character is Ava Lavendar. She is a human girl. That is emphasized throughout the entire book. She's a human girl who just so happened to be born with wings. And these wings could not be removed from her body because they were a very big part of her circulatory system, where it was wings could not exist without the girl and the girl could not exist without the wings. Vivian, a big part of the story, Vivian, Ava's mother, fell in love with this boy that she met at the age of 6. They became enthralled with one another, and as they grew up in teenage years, they fell in love. They were happy with one another. However, Jack, her lover, had a father who was disgusting. I mean, he treated his son like literal piles of dog poop. So Jack went through his entire life trying to feel useful to his father or try to do something good, to the point that when he went away to college, he found another woman and left Vivian. And this is a big part of the story. I'm not going to go into any more of that, but it's a big part of the story. But I think the greatest part of this book is that the author wrote it to where you go to a point where you fall in love with these characters. I mean, you fall in love with these characters, but somehow she switched the script and makes you hate them. Because I'm going to show you a video that I took at 10 o'clock at night detailing one of my incidents where I was mad at a character I came to love.
How could you, Jack? I was rooting for you. And you go ahead and engage to this girl and leave Vivian like that. Shame on you trying to...
But anyways, so you come to love these characters, but somehow the author makes you switch it up and you're like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? This isn't hard. The whole book spans around this family just finds tragedy in love. And I just keep thinking, love is not that hard. You love someone, it's not that hard. But in this book, they make it very difficult to love. But anyways, as the story progresses, you fall in love with the characters, you fall out of love with the characters, you ache for the characters. You're introduced to characters who you think are going to be an amazing addition to the story, and then you find out they are the sickest of people you have ever read of or can't even imagine meeting in your life. And I must say, there is a disclaimer for this book. If you know someone or have ever experienced sexual assault or rape, there is a scene in this book with that, and it is very, very dark, to the point that even though this is a YA book, I think it's a little bit too dark for teenagers. But I recall being a teenager and reading dark books. I mean, I read Stephen King's It, I think, when I was like 11 or 12. And that is dark. There is a moment in this book that is very, very tragic. With what happens at the end, I had to close the book and I cried because I was just so happy. But I was so infuriated that the book ended. I could have read that story for the rest of my life. I would have wanted to go through the rest of Ava's life with her, falling in love with her best friend's brother, to them getting married, to having kids, to growing old. I would have read that. I did not want this story to end. And I want every single person to read it. And this book just cements in my mind even more that I should not be jaded towards genres of books. I always prided myself, for some odd reason, like somehow the genres that I read made me an adult or responsible or mature. I always prided myself on loving historical fiction books, horror, suspense, all that stuff, as if it somehow made me mature. But as I started my journey into reading all the books on the New York Times bestsellers, I've learned that I can venture out and read indie books as well. And I've come to love different genre of books, and I have found some diamonds in the rough. So I'm proud of myself that I don't stick to just one genre now. One genre does not define me. My favorite part is going into a book and not knowing what it's about. I love picking up a book, not knowing anything about it, knowing nothing of the synopsis, and just reading it with a blank slate. I also find myself stepping away from books that become really, really popular. I'm just ignorant like that and rebellious like that. It's even with movies and TV shows. Anything that is significantly popular or huge with the masses, I avoid. I don't like very popular stuff. I don't like being a part of the trend or being fangirl, if that's the thing. But I did see a couple of years ago this book come out and everybody going berserk over it. And so it's been a couple of years, so I decided, hey, why not? And I wish I read this book sooner. If you hear my cat clawing in the background, I'm sorry. He's really, really fat and doesn't know how to jump. So he crawls underneath the gate. So that's his nails scratching. But anyways, to sum this up, because it's already taken too long, this book, The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavendar by Leslie Walton, remember, I'm sorry if I butchered that name, is a 5-star out of 5. I'm going to recommend this book to anyone and everyone I ever come across, and it is going to be placed in my bookshelf with so much love. Other than that, I hope that you guys pick up this book and leave in the comments below if you loved it, what was your favorite part, even if you hated it as well, because I appreciate all opinions on a book. We're all different. We all like different things. So, yeah, if you haven't read this book, read it.